Carson, good to see you again. Welcome back from Hawaii. You survived the tsunami,
Yeah.
so it's good to have you back. You and I were chatting a little bit about what we do to stay sharp in terms of learning, professional development, things we're reading, podcasts. What are you doing to try to, keep getting better and better? What are you learning about? What are you curious about these days?
Yeah, great question, and thank you for that. Yes, the tsunami experience was an interesting one. Look, sharpening the axe is critical, and I don't know what it is. I think the older we get and the more self-aware we get, the more we realize like we've got so much to learn, and um, I reached a point several years ago where I realized I just wanted to be a student, especially of career and life and sales, and I wanted to master my craft. But on the same token, there's a lot of self-improvement that I've continued to do, and at times I think there's always ebbs and flows, right? Sometimes I can have a very obsessive personality. I'm obsessing about hey, it's our first quarter, like prospecting and getting in front of the right people and, executing the process. But I've turned very obsessive around learning and consuming podcasts and books and things like that. Um, a few years back, I read the book Winning and the book Relentless by Tim Grover, and it really helped me understand more. And then some Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek that I read earlier this year. It really helped me understand sometimes that affliction that we have to really gravitate toward those dopamine hits. Now, dopamine can come in the form of winning, which I've had a lot of success in my career, but that's not constant. Like you win something, you win a deal, but within a couple of days, like that euphoria fades and we're always on the quest for something else. And, as we get older and things change in our lives, like it becomes less about us winning and us getting that euphoria becomes more about, maybe instilling that in your kids or paying it forward, coaching and training people. I know you and I talk a lot about like people that we've mentored and people that we've coached and led and, being parents and that feeling that you get when you're able to see those results in someone else and affect their outcomes. And so I've done a lot of studying and I'm doing a lot of studying on those sorts of things. Been watching a lot of documentaries. I watched the Billy Joel documentary. I watched the Tiger Woods documentary. I watched a Kobe Bryant documentary. I'm trying to consume materials about people that are winners or that are considered the best at whatever they do. I read a biography on Tiger Woods. I just started reading one on the autobiography of Andre Agassi. And just that mindset and that mentality, there's two parts of it. There's the part that the public sees, and there's that winning, and then there's that staying at the top of their game. But inside, there's that struggle, and there's that aging or seeing your talents slip or your opportunities slip. And how do people grapple with that? And sometimes they don't grapple with that the best way. I'm always trying to, right the ship. And the last thing I'll mention is Mark Manson. So he's a best-selling author, some great books. He's got a podcast, and I was listening to this episode recently that was about like how to let yourself be happy. And what I found really interesting about it, Jeff, was like he basically said at any given time, like our body and our psyche and our mindset has a way of kind of getting us back to like a 7 out of 10. There's a lot of things that can be the affect in the immediate, and that could be like something cool, something great happens, you win the lottery, like drink alcohol, you have a win at work or whatever it is, that could put you at an immediate like 10 out of 10 in that moment. But our body has a way of putting us back to, 5 out of 10, 4 out of 10 at any given moment. We get bad news, somebody's in an accident, whatever it is. But our lives and our bodies and our psyche have a way of kind of getting us back to that 7 out of 10. And that really resonated with me. And, especially as I look at some of the things that I did when I was younger to, have that positive effect in the moment, going out partying and spending time with different people and running with different crowds and the what it felt like being in the call center and getting a one call close to now when my victories are more hey, I got to read my kid a bedtime story, or I got to take my wife on a date, or I was able to coach somebody and they were able to get promoted. So it's very interesting. And at the end of the day, it all boils down to love, whether it's love in relationships or friendships or passion for what you do. But I've spent a lot of time really studying what makes me tick, what makes others tick, and trying to figure out how to optimize that experience. It's been actually 11 months today since I had my last drink of alcohol, and you know, it's an interesting journey figuring out more about yourself and why you do the things that you do, and it's been really illuminating for me. And I feel like hopefully it's making me a better man, better husband, better dad. What about you?
Love it. Well, that's a tough act to follow. That was very deep and very cool. I'll start with just like the nerdier stuff, like professional stuff, I guess. I've been a part of Pavilion for a while now, 4 or 5 years. Pavilion's one of these, go to market. It's actually really for like a lot of different roles now, but it's a community that has courses, and I just took I think it was called AI powered go to market, and now I'm actually in an AI for marketers course. I'm not a marketer per se, but wanted to understand, for example, like how to use Clay, which is a pretty interesting tool. And yeah, it's actually been pretty neat because I think learning about AI has really changed the way that I'm thinking about architecting it within my organization. And I've started to really round my perspective on a few different paths we can take. And I've really formed I guess maybe an opinion on which path we should take just based on doing this course. So I think that was cool just because it was inspiring for me, and it just led me down a path. And it's always cool when you can like take up a new thing, whether it's like training for like a race or a new activity that you like. And I feel like I kind of uncovered a new potential passion because of this course that I've been taking. I'm also an LP in Stage 2 Capital here in Boston, and they've been putting out a lot of like thought leadership around some of what their portfolio companies are doing. So I've been spending a good time reading about that, actually talking to some of the people that are implementing some of these tools in their organizations, so I can move a little bit beyond like the theoretical and get down to like practically like how do you actually do this thing. Because people will talk in the abstract about AI and they'll say like, oh, it's great, you can all these things you can do, but I actually just want to know like, well, how do I actually like get from like point A to point B and do it in my company. So those are two different things. On a personal level, I would say at the beginning of the year, I've really, it's ironic as somebody who's written a couple books and was an English major. I've had a really hard time reading because I have a really tough issue with probably like some form of ADD, and I have a hard time focusing. But I started with audiobooks earlier this year, and with audiobooks, I'm actually able to consume them very quickly because whenever I'm going for a run or whenever I'm in the car or pretty much whenever I have like free time, I can just like listen to the book and I can focus on it. And it's been great for me, similar to you in this whole thing with, you mentioned like the Mark Manson and like letting yourself be happy. I started getting into books that had to do with consciousness, and to some degree, maybe, some tenets of Buddhism and letting go of things. And you made a comment about like looking at why you do certain things or why you feel a certain way about certain things. And sometimes when you're able to ask yourself that question, you realize that it all comes down to some form of ego. You're able to let go of it. You realize it's not really you that's having the experience. It's you watching yourself think about some sort of reaction to the experience. And those are two very different things. And I think because of that, it's that has helped me a lot personally in relationships. It's helped me with happiness, I think, when there's certain things that are upsetting that I can't control, not deciding not to get worked up about it, deciding that I don't need to say something about it, I think has been really good for me. But I've also blended in some books that have to do with sales. I listened to Don't Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, which is one of, got to be one of the best sales books ever. And I used it in one of our sales team on sites at the beginning of the summer, and it was a big hit. gave everyone a copy of the book, learned so much about negotiation, really. So I've been sprinkling in, things that similar to you have helped me personally, just in like my mindset, but also books that are helping me professionally in terms of like how I actually do my job every day. So that's what I've been doing. Not too dissimilar to you, and it's been a lot of fun.
I love it, man. When you were talking about that, Ryan Holiday, great author. He's got a newsletter, talks a lot about stoicism and the obstacle is the way, is one of my favorites by him. And just, that, and the ego is the enemy. And just, being able to acknowledge these things. And ironically, or not, Mark Manson in that one of the podcasts I was listening to recently, we talked about that, that stimuli or stimulus, and then that space between, when we choose to react. And ideally, we get to a place where we can create a gap there and we can play in that gap. Because I know for a fact when I was a 20 some odd year old hothead, if I had a stimulus of some sort, I was acting immediately, whether it was reacting or whether it was, thinking I need to feel a certain way right now. And, you get to a place where you have the discipline and the maturity and the polish to realize, no, I don't need to do anything. I don't need to be heard or seen or say anything or, cause a stir. I can just keep a steady hand on the wheel. And I don't know, there's a blessing in peace and calm.
Agreed. Couldn't agree more.
Beautiful stuff. Another great topic, sir. Thanks for sharing some stuff for our audience. And I'd love to hear too, like, what other people are consuming. What are you learning from? What are you reading? What are you taking in? How are you sharpening the axe? Because I'm always adding to my list. So thank you.